Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Christopher Alender, director of The Old Ways, which is on Netflix right now, and it's coming out digital October 12th, which is not very far from now, next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this. And I really like The Old Ways. Even before we set up the interview, I saw the poster and the trailer, and I was very intrigued.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Glad it's getting around.
Yeah, for people not aware yet, which they should be, but if they're not, I can give them an idea of what it's about.
Ooh. Me or you?
Yeah, you.
Oh, me.
Probably better coming from you.
It's about 90 minutes long.
There you go.
No,
that's all they need.
Yeah, it's easy. It's about it's a horror film, obviously. Kind of a twist on an exorcism kind of structure, and it's about a woman who was born in Mexico but was raised in the U.S. and returns to her home kind of region and is captured by some mysterious bruja, which is a witch doctor, and is told that she has a demon inside of her and that they're going to take it out at all costs. So chaos ensues, and a bunch of magic and witchcraft and scary things and all that good stuff.
So how did you get involved? Did you know the writer who wrote the screenplay?
Yeah, Marcos and I have been collaborators since we met in college in the mid 90s, and we've been making commercials and movies and shorts and all kinds of stuff ever since. And this was inspired. He was born in Puerto Rico and was inspired by some kind of outlandish tales that his mother had told him, which blew his mind when he was younger because he was raised very kind of traditional Catholic, and to suddenly be hearing tales of brujas or brujos and healers and mysticism was very abstract to him and really stuck with him, especially as like a young horror fan that he was growing up. And he and I have kind of kicked it around for years, and then finally he kind of cracked it and was like, I think we could take these stories and kind of shift the perspective on the traditional exorcism story and do something really interesting and unique. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty dope. So we he did a quick kind of vomit draft of it, and it was really cool. And then I jumped in with him and we started researching and honing it and kind of going back and forth and working backwards from some things that we would find on like online or in the library or stories we would hear from people, and kind of develop this whole world together over maybe a year and a half, and then started making it.
Yeah. Since he grew up with the stories and, you started to research, it's a new world to you, I assume. So, what did you think when you started to look into this?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I'm super curious by nature. So every little nugget that we would discover was just kind of like another rabbit hole to go down. And I really geek out on the research phase and the prep and the world building and all that stuff. So it was just really interesting and fun, and such a vivid kind of palette that we had to play with. And then we started bringing on more collaborators and producers and other people with Latin American backgrounds that had more input and their own stories and their own kind of perspective on stuff. And we just kind of had this really collaborative experience where we were building something kind of out of thin air, but using, being as authentic as we could with the spirit of it, but definitely making the horror movie version of it.
Did you get to witness like any real brujas or healers or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, we've met some healers and stuff like that, but mostly it was through documentaries, news like clippings we could find, interviews with people, and like random like YouTube videos that if you get down that rabbit hole, it's hard to climb back out of it. But hopefully one day, we'll get to go meet some more people who've lived this world, and maybe we could do a sequel or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. So you said he's Marcos grew up also like a horror movie fan. Yourself, are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say exclusively. Like I wasn't the kid who only watched horror movies. I was more into kind of anything that had any of that stuff in it. So if it was horror or sci-fi or fantasy, kind of just all the nerd edge of the stuff,
which is cool.
So
it wasn't.
Yeah,
cool
so maybe exactly. Maybe even doses of it. So he's definitely more the like dyed in the wool aficionado, and I was more. I tend to gravitate towards things with hyphens. It's like it's a horror sci-fi or horror, like Alien and all the Spielberg-y kind of ones, and Poltergeist and Exorcist, or if there's like a period element to it, or if it's historically based, even in the loosest sense, that kind of stuff I always seems to attract me more than just like straight 80s slashers, which I enjoyed when I was a kid, but they don't hold up for me the same way that like an Alien or Terminator, or even, I mean, I do love Nightmare on Elm Street. I still enjoy that, like legitimately enjoy that. But a lot of the
more fantasy, you're talking about things with hyphen, but there is more of a fantasy element to Nightmare on Elm Street than a lot of the other slasher films.
Yeah. And then like super filmmaker-y ones, like I loved anything Sam Raimi or Coen Brothers, or like De Palma and Hitchcock and all that, any of those that like really had a real filmmaker's touch to them got me as well. So, I mean, I just know, because I produce a lot of horror now and I go to the festivals, like I know what the difference between me and like a person who bleeds horror is, but compared to a normal audience member, I'm definitely a fairly big horror fan.
Yeah. Well, I always thought I was a big horror fan until I was in LA a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. I went to it was in Burbank. They have like every month at the time they did a horror trivia, and those people were way.
Where? Because that's where I work, in Burbank. That's where we filmed the movie, was in Burbank. So there's some horror trivia for you that they don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, one of the questions, it was like, what was the kill count in Robocop 2? And it was like 118 or something. I was like, how could anyone possibly just know that?
That must be just a recurring trivia question or something.
I don't know. But it was it was like at a toy store. I'm not sure the name of it now.
In Burbank. Wow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think they do it virtually at the moment.
Yeah, I bet. I'm trying to think where that would be. A toy store. Well, I'm a Valley rat now, so I tend to know all the places. But
yeah. So, what were you mentioned a lot of movies there. Were there any in particular that like made you like when you were young, like this is something I would like to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. I mean, I was born the year Star Wars came out and was raised on like a bootleg copy of that, where like people stood up at the end during the credits. So that was kind of my first taste. I mean, very, very young, before I could even talk. But all this Lucas, Spielberg, a lot of the Henson stuff, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, those types of things. And then a lot of anime. I got really into animation at a young age, like wanted to be an animator until I was a teenager, and have still incorporated that into my repertoire. But I'm not like a professional Disney animator, but so I got really into Secret of NIMH and a lot of the kind of classic classic Disney animation and some of the Bluth stuff. And so became kind of a animation snob at a young age, and then kind of segued that into live action. And now I always kind of incorporate, there's always like some VFX or some animation or a puppet or a Muppet or whatever, in almost everything I do. So that's kind of the thread that ties them all together.
Well, you said Raimi really like, especially Evil Dead Part 2, that really is like a live action, like adult version of Looney Tunes.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And I watched that like crazy, because I discovered that pretty late, like probably in high school or whatever, and just loved it. But at the age where I was already interested in filmmaking, so I really loved, and the more it was harder back then because we didn't really have the internet, but if you'd find the whatever Fangoria or Cinefex or whatever, some magazine that would talk about how they made the movies or a book about it, and it was just fascinating to be like, wow, they didn't have any money. They were in the woods with a 2x4 strapped to the camera. And so that was super inspiring at a young age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you mention bootleg of Star Wars, like there is something weird, like, because now you can watch like pretty much everything at any time. It's streaming somewhere, or you can, easily get the DVD or Blu-ray, but there is a certain appreciation, I think, for some of the movies back when either you'd only see them when they would happen to air on TV, or if you had a weird bootleg, because a lot of the weird horror movies, they're not even weird, but like The Burning and the first Evil Dead, like they were hard to find unless you just got like the third generation bootleg on VHS somewhere.
Yeah, you always had to have a friend, I always had a friend who had access to weird stuff, or like I had a friend down the street who somehow, I don't know where he got all of his money, but he had a catalog where he would order anime from Japan, and you had no, like, it was like tiny, like phone book font. Yeah. And it would be like Demon Hunter J or whatever. And then it would just have like one sentence about it, and that's it. And he'd be like, okay, $60. I mean, it was, I don't know what it was, but it seemed like an insane amount of money because they were imported from Japan and whatever. And you'd have no idea if they're even going to be decent, let alone good, and so it was a big crapshoot every time. But there was always somebody, like, you always had a friend like that who had, who knew about, if I go to this comic book store, I can do this, or the person at this movie store won't card us if we want to rent Faces of Death, whatever it is. So you had to have someone in the know, and it was never me, but I always knew someone who knew someone. Yeah.
Oddly enough, I was never carded for anything until Leatherface 3D, like 5 years ago. I was like 40, I think, when it came out. It was funny. Very strange to ask me for ID.
At a movie theater. Wow. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever.
First time ever. I remember even seeing a couple horror movies when I was a kid, and my mom would actually write me a note in case they would ask me, but it never came up. Yeah.
It was more at the movies, like the rental stores, where I felt like they were a little more adamant about it, especially if it was like a chain, they had rules.
Yeah, I didn't know this at the time, but my mom actually told me later. She actually signed a thing that I could rent anything, so I suppose that's why they never carded me at the.
That's funny.
At the video store. But when you mentioned like animation and stuff, it made me think of the original artwork on the Old Ways poster, because it has that old, like, classic kind of comic book feel to it. I really like it.
Yeah. Like the EC Comics kind of look. There was some good, like, some old, because we made that for the festival. We were like, this would be fun. We could do something. We could do something cool for the festival where, they're never going to let us do this if we get a real release. And, so we hired this guy, Felipe Flores, who's a Mexican-American artist here that we've worked with one other time on another project. And he's just awesome, man. I mean, I gave him a few kind of basic, like, we wanted the EC Comics style, but we also went on like a Struzan-esque, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of.
Yeah, I totally see that too. Yeah.
That type of layout, but then drawn like in the style of like a Tales from the Crypt or something like that. So he just killed it, and people love it. So we've ended up using it like in the actual release, which we never intended. I mean, it's on the on Netflix and everything, but there'll be a different cover for the Blu-ray.
Yeah. When I saw it, I honestly did think, I bet they use this for the festival, because it happens a lot. I'll be at festivals and they're really cool, like, hand painted posters, and then it'll be different. And I mean, sometimes it works out, but sometimes it really takes away the cool factor for me, because it'll be very typical orange, blue kind of.
Yeah, for sure. But we wanted to also like lean in because the movie kind of evolves as you watch it,
sure,
and it becomes more of a like pulpier, fun thing. We wanted to kind of hint at that with the poster, so that people didn't think they were just getting into like a chamber drama too early. So I think it worked. I'm happy with it. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go. We premiered at Sitges in Spain, and it was like right in the height of the first wave, I think, or something like that. Maybe it was a second wave by then, but so we weren't able to go, and so I never even had like a real tangible printout of it.
Did you get to see it at any of the festival? Well, if it premiered there, I guess you did get to see it at any festival with people, with an audience?
Yeah, eventually I did in April, because we premiered in October, I think, or September of last year in Spain. But then in April, it had died down, and they were doing in-person screenings at the Florida Film Festival, which is actually the town where Marcus grew up, the writer. So we were like, oh, that'd be cool to have our US premiere there and get to see it with real people and on a real screen. So we flew back for that, and that was nice. And then we did there was like a little kind of exhibition kind of thing that we did in Austin a few months later, and then we had a premiere kind of deal here right before it came out. That was probably our biggest screening, because we had like less capacity restrictions. So that was fun. It was fun to get to see that. Although that was a lot of filmmaker, or like a lot of the cast and crew. So like they kind of sort of knew what to expect. I'd like to see it with that size of audience, with strangers,
Yeah, of course.
We've got one more festival coming up in Provo, Utah, called Film Quest. So excited to see that one last time before it's on home video and everything for the rest of eternity.
Had you had any previous festivals? Like, did you go them either even just yourself going with them, or have any other films or shorts at festivals?
Yeah, like I've produced quite a few films over mostly in the last 3-4 years, but over the last 10 years. So I was getting pretty ingrained in the whole like midnight circuit. Like we did TIFF midnight, and we've done Sundance, and we've done South by and Fantastic and Fantasia just as premieres, and then we've done all the big Sitges and all the ones around the world. So that's been great as a producer, and I was really looking forward to my directorial debut, because nobody cares about produced unfortunately. Yeah, I got to miss that unfortunately on this round, but yeah, I've kind of gotten to the point where like now I know people when I go, and we can get complimentary waivers on our submissions because our movie's already played there once, or a different movie had played there, so we're alums and stuff like that. So I feel like I was really starting to get into the community, and then the screeching brakes with the pandemic came on, and hopefully we'll get into it again here next year and have some more fun stuff to show.
Yeah, you said directorial debut. So when you started to make films, was that your goal, that you wanted to direct?
Yeah, I always wanted to direct, and I do direct like commercials and promos and music videos and stuff like that. But I have been looking for like the right, and I've had projects that like I had a project set up at Bad Robot for a long time that was kind of like a start and stop development kind of cycle thing. So it's like time just kept slipping away, and I had things kind of lined up that felt like they were going to happen, and they didn't happen. So this was a real thing where Marcus and I were like, let's just throw caution to the wind and go make something before we're too old to do anything and prove to ourselves and hopefully the rest of the world that we can pull it off. And I'm really glad we did, because had I not done that, I would have sat around for another 2 years, without anything to show for it. So, because we wrapped like 2 days before the lockdown in LA.
Yeah, I don't want to make this about me at all, but I produced my first feature we filmed it in February, March, and we're just now starting to get back to it because everything obviously was on hold for a long time.
We shot it before the pandemic or after?
It's right before, but we
that's when we shot.
Yeah,
we shot in February and beginning of March.
Really like a couple weeks later, the next week, I think everything was
crazy.
Yeah.
Did you finish production or did you have to stop?
No, that's why we actually are starting on the 10th to get a few more things done. So
that sucks. Where are you based?
I'm in Massachusetts, but I went out to LA to do it. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Because there's so much good witch stuff there.
That's true. It's not a witch movie, but yes, I have Salem not too far from me.
Oh, that's cool. Our editor, Matt, is from up in that area. I don't know if he's from Massachusetts or from, I think he's from New Hampshire.
Yeah. Honestly, most parts of New Hampshire would be closer to Salem than I am. I'm on the Cape, and it's not really.
So we always he's our resident witch. So we're always teasing him about that. But
Salem's really interesting because there's like the actual old stuff that's really interesting. And then there's the very like touristy stuff that's kind of silly, but it's kind of fun too in its own way. Like there's a big statue of Bewitched, and I'm like, I don't know what that really has to do with Salem, but I guess it's kind of funny.
Yeah, Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yeah, right. I don't think she was burned at this. Well, I went on the walking tour. They weren't actually burned; they were hung. But
yeah,
we don't need to talk about that. So,
speaking of without your head.
Exactly. And some of them were crushed, which does not sound pleasant.
Crushed? I did not know that.
Yeah, I do recommend that, the walking tour. And one guy was crushed over several days, and he never admitted to being a witch and died. And I was like, it was
I'm a warlock.
Right. Does not sound
you're
like
a witch.
Go, so.
You're a witch.
Yeah.
I'm a warlock.
If you ever have your choice of how to go, I do not recommend being crushed to death.
No.
That's the moral of the show.
I waive my right to that.
All right. So casting the movie, how hands on are you during the casting?
Yeah. It was intense. To be honest, I was most scared going into it most concerned about the Bruja, Luz, because she doesn't have like a lot of lines. She's in the movie a lot, but it's like she's standing there, or she's doing a ritual, or she's doing, and it's a lot more of a tone and feel thing. So I was pretty concerned that I didn't even know like how we were going to audition that. I had to lean on our casting team to help us a little bit, or quite a bit there. But then like on the first day of callbacks, people they brought in, we found Julia, who we ended up casting, and she was just amazing. And I was like, oh, thank God, this is going to be easy. And it wasn't, because we found the next two, Miranda, played by Andrea Cortez, super easy. Like she came in like, yeah, she's it. We did it. And then Sal came in to audition for Javi, and he was the polar opposite of the way the role was written, but he was so good that we were like, yep, he's the guy. Change everything we thought that was going to be. And then it took us forever to find the lead role of Christina, which for some reason I thought was going to not be so hard, because I was like, it's a good role. Like there's tons of Latina actresses in that age range in LA, like anywhere you go, I thought it would just be no problem. And it was so much harder than I had thought. We found so many great actors in their own right, but they kind of couldn't hit all the different facets of the character, who we discovered through the audition process was more complicated than we even thought. And they would be able to hit one or two or three of the, like, they can be tough, but they can't be like vulnerable, or they can be vulnerable but not tough, and they can be funny but not this, or they can be sad but that. And so we ended up pushing production 2 or 3 times. We had to say, we don't have actors yet, we can't shoot the movie. And we almost got to the point where we may have needed to cancel because we just couldn't like ask the crew to be on hold anymore, and we didn't know when we'd be able to pick it back up. And then I think Bridget was working on another project or something, and so she hadn't been to any of the other auditions, and she came in the 11th hour, and we were all like, yeah, finally we found her. She was amazing, and we didn't have any rehearsal time. We kind of had to just start shooting right away as soon as we signed all the contracts, and we just hit the ground running and figured it out together, and it was worked out. It was good, but it was kind of a risk at the time.
So what was it about her specifically that like, oh, she's right for this role?
It was just the sum of everything. I mean, she looked like what we imagined she might look like. She was super tough. Like, she's physically extremely strong and could deal with what ultimately is like 80 minutes of having her ass handed to her in the movie, in a way that you felt like she could become a hero at some point. She had the ability to like hide this trauma in a way that felt very believable. She could be very vulnerable when required, but also as a character be able to like put on like a tough exterior shell. She just had it all and super prepared. Just really did her homework and came to the table with ideas and opinions and a point of view for everything, and challenged me as a director to make sure I had the answers for everything, or a way to come up with the answer. It was just, and there were probably about 4 or 5 of us between the producers and the writer and me, and who were kind of weighing in on, thumbs up, thumbs down for everybody. And we could just never we got like all but one thumb on a couple of different people, but there was always one holdout somewhere that would be like, but can she do this? And we're like, I guess you're right. No, sorry. But she was the first one that like, it was, the only one that was thumbs up across the board, and we jumped on the opportunity to hire her, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And it's interesting we said about Julia, who plays Luz, is because in my notes I wrote she has a lot of presence, and which comes through even in the stills, I think. But as you said, that would be hard to. What do you do? How do you do the cast for that? Do they just come in and you look at it?
Yeah, because she's not in makeup, when they audition. Right. So she is younger than we're insinuating with the movie, and she's got regular she actually showed up with like her most kind of authentic clothes that she owned, the most kind of traditional looking stuff, but it was nowhere near like handmade rags and bones. It wasn't anything like that.
Pretty wild.
But she gave it her all. It was more like, it was almost like auditioning a dancer or something, because it was more body awareness, posture, intensity. We kind of came up with some little weird, almost exercises to go through. But it was daunting for me, because I'd never had to cast, if you're like, here, read all these lines, make it work, that makes sense to me in an audition, but the kind of nonverbal thing was a challenge that I wasn't expecting. And luckily we found her, and but that's the thing, it's all in casting, you you just got to find the right people. And when you find the right people, they know how to do it, you know?
So when did you get to see her like in full makeup and in her wardrobe?
We did a test like maybe a week or two before. I don't think it was full wardrobe, but we had the dress made from scratch, but then it had to be distressed and all that stuff too. So it looked like she'd been in it for years. And then there's layers and layers of like jewelry that we either borrowed or made. And then like our prop guy, Derek, you would love him. He'd go to like, oh, we need more bones. So he'd like go to Costco and get a rotisserie chicken and eat it for lunch and then be like, I got some bones. And he's like threading them up and like putting them on her. He made the whole like, that coyote skull staff and everything from scratch. And it was little by little, you know, and we had to do a lot of experimenting to try to make them, because me and Callie, the makeup artist, had come up with like our design for the makeup, but it was, you know, it was like on our iPad. So we had to find out like what were the actual materials we were going to use to make it that felt authentic. Like she could have, you know, it's not like this woman's not sitting in a makeup chair every morning getting all pretty before she does her exorcism. This is something that like she got some clay out of the stream and she's got a bowl of that and she's got a bowl of chicken blood or something and she just slaps it on without a mirror probably. And so it had to feel, you know, it had to look cool and movie like and whatever, but it also there had to be an air of believability to how she may have actually achieved that as well. So that took some rounds of just like, let's try this type of makeup. Let's try this type of stuff. Let's try this. Let's try this technique until we could kind of nail that. But super, super fun. I mean, when she started to take form, it was like, oh, yeah, here she is, the Bruja.
No, like the prop guy you mentioned and everyone on the crew, were they people you worked with like on other things and commercials and stuff, or were they just people you
to a certain degree? You know, the commercial lifestyle and the independent film lifestyle are very different. So there's not a lot of as much crossover, because the indie film people are more like kind of nomadic and wandering minstrels, if you will, and the commercial people tend to have like a house and a family, and they want to get home by a certain time so they can see the kids, and you know they're not like, some of them do, you know, but you know not as many of them are like, I'm just going to go live on the side of a mountain for 6 weeks and not see anybody, you know, like that. It's a kind of a different headspace. So a little bit more on the post side, I was working with people that I work with all the time. But as for the production crew, these are people that me and some of the other producers had worked with on other independent films, and we had been really careful to cultivate a band of merry minstrels that just had the right attitude, because we really wanted to have a no drama policy with the crew, and we had over time I think really pared it down to just like amazing people who are extraordinarily talented, but also just like a joy to be around and good for morale, and because you need all that, especially on a lower budget project where we can't just throw money at it to make the problem go away. And that even doesn't always work anyway. But, you know, everybody there was working for something more than just their paycheck. And this was an opportunity to make something they could be proud of and put their stamp on and be creative with. So I would say about a third of the crew I had worked with before, and but almost everybody had worked with one of like either me or the other 2 or 3 producers in some capacity. And so we were able to kind of have that high standard that I think made the movie. I mean, it just really made all the difference to have that, because one bad apple can just wreck it, you know, a bad attitude or a prima donna kind of personality. So, and I've seen it happen time and time again, and we just had a great experience on this one, and it was, I think, all due to just hiring the right people, setting the right tone, hopefully, and making movie magic every day.
You said you filmed it in Burbank, so for the
jungles of Burbank.
The jungles of Burbank, exactly. Was there any problems in when you're filming outside? People being around.
No, so all the exteriors were in Puerto Rico, in the actual jungles, but
that makes more sense to me.
Vast majority of the movie is inside, so we built all that in Burbank in a soundstage, and so no random people. We had a couple fire alarms because we had to run so much haze to make it look like a sweaty jungle that it kept setting off the fire alarms. We'd all go outside and wait for the fire department to come and walk through and make sure nobody was.
They're probably used to it, I guess.
Immolated, yeah. But we're like, we look like a bunch of maniacs, like blood and stuff and goats, and but yeah, then we went out in the jungle, and we still had to, a car would drive by playing like rap music, and we'd have to be like, hold for rap music. We're in the middle of the jungle, and there's still people with cars loud enough to ruin our take. So no matter where you go, but the cave was another story like that. The cave itself was so loud that we couldn't hear each other talk because of the water and the bats.
Okay.
It had rained pretty heavily the past off and on for the week prior. So it was like a raging stream going through the middle of the cave that was dry when they had scouted it. And then there were, I would say conservatively, 100,000 bats, maybe more, just making so much noise. Like they were just that volume, that amount of animals squeaking and making their little sonar noise was pretty dang loud. So if we were more than 6-7 feet apart, we had to walk up to each other to communicate what we were saying.
Any dangers filming out in the jungle and out in the cave?
There were some scary bugs. There was a thing called like a tailless scorpion or something that's very scary looking. I don't think it's dangerous, but that was interesting. Our Juan Campos, who did the post audio mixing, he actually came with us to Puerto Rico to do he didn't do the field recording on set normally, but in Puerto Rico he did. Like we only had like 5-6 people that went, and he came out with us because he wanted to he didn't have any, like all of his like CDs and stuff of like stock jungles. He's like, it all sounds terrible, and you've heard it a million times, and it's not going to be the right type of jungle. And so he bought this, or I don't know if he already had it, but he had this like surround sound microphone that he brought, and he was tramping around through the jungle while we were filming, just recording hours of real authentic jungle leaves and wind and rustling and animals and stuff like that. And he traipsed off one day because he came into the cave with us. He's like, nope, I can't record in here. Like it was just useless. So he's like, I'm just gonna go into the jungle and get some sound. So he went off, and he was standing in the middle of the forest, and he'd stand there for 20 minutes or whatever and just record. And then he moved on, then came back, and right where he was standing, a tree had fallen and would have crushed him. This huge, enormous tree, like 70-foot tall tree, had just like. So I guess there's a little danger there. Yeah. But we were on. It was pretty safe, The worst thing really was that COVID was just about to blow up. We were there. Our hotel was 100 yards from where the cruise ships would park every day. Like 5 new cruise ships would pull in with like 40,000 like sweaty potential COVID victims getting off. And that was nerve-wracking because we would wake up every morning, like the first few days, the concierge or whatever has like a little bowl of apples, and I would like grab an apple on our way to scout. And then by the day 3, I was like, should I be putting my hand in that bowl and eating that apple? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then we're in that cave with all those bats, and that's when like rumors were going around that like maybe COVID started from bats, and we're like, oh god, they're gonna poop COVID in our mouths, we're gonna die. But we made it out one piece.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad. Yeah. How about just the idea of tackling an exorcism movie? Because I always think that and like a shark movie, they're hard to do because everyone's going to compare them to The Exorcist or Jaws. But I think in your favorites, it's so much different than a normal.
Yeah, movie. I mean, this would be like, I don't know if they're like, we're doing a shark movie, but it's in the air, or whatever, like it's with a fish. Yeah, it was a little daunting, but there, time and time again, it's like every year there's a new Exorcism movie, and they're kind of similar to The Exorcist. And I mean, every year there's probably 10, but every year there's like a decent one or a good one. I'm like, how can they keep making ones that are actually still good? So I wasn't as scared, because same with like found footage movies. I'm always like, well, that's dead. No one will ever do a good one of those. And then like 6 months later, someone does one. I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good. Good job. So I think we were, we really were conscious of the history of the Exorcism films before us, and kind of used it as an opportunity to just zig every time they zagged, and try to kind of flip everything when we could and spin it. I mean, I thought the fact that it was written, I mean, regardless of the whole like kind of cultural shift, doing it from the point of view of the person who was supposedly possessed, I thought was super fresh. Because it's always like, my daughter's possessed, I need to go to the Vatican and get the priest to come and so this was totally reversed. Like, it was like, our main character is possessed, the quote unquote priest is forcibly like against her will trying to save her. So I just feel like almost everything about it was like opposite. So I was feeling pretty good about that, and it had been so long since there had been an exorcism movie that is like the definitive exorcism movie. So I mean, but I guess it's the same with Jaws like that. But there's been like multiple good shark movies since Jaws, that are still pretty cool.
I mentioned that about Exorcist, because the original Exorcist, like, she's almost like an object. It's not really, you don't really think of it really from her end of what's going on to her. It's, the mom and then the priest and everybody. So,
and then you get that 1 minute at the end where she's like back to normal, and you're like, oh, but yeah, you don't know her.
No, because I read the book recently. I've been trying to catch up on a lot of classic horror novels during the pandemic. I listened to them on audiobook, and there's really nothing from her side in the book either.
Yeah. And same with The Conjuring, like, you're kind of more with the exorcists, or they're not even really exorcists so much, but like, you're with the kind of detective people. So there's like many layers between our kind of true protagonist and the person possessed, because you've got like the mom and the dad or whatever of the family that have a girl that's possessed. And so yeah, you're always like so many generations divorced from the possessee, I guess, or whatever you call it, the possessed. And I'm sure your fans will probably know like 20 movies that prove me wrong there, but I don't really know of any that really took it from that.
No, I don't think so either. That's interesting. But if we go to the horror trivia night in Burbank, they'll yell at us maybe.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of gross scenes, but for me in particular is the hair. I don't want to give away the movie, but the hair coming out of the mouth is very very disturbing scene for me to watch.
Yeah, we like to say there's like Marcus just crammed in like a phobia for everybody. It's like, you don't like rats? We got you. Snakes? Check. Hair vomit? Got it. Body trauma? We're in. Even like there's a phobia for everything. Like, people were like, oh no, not going. I'm scared of caves. And I'm like, caves is a thing? I didn't know caves in particular were a thing that people were scared of.
I don't like in The Descent when they're like when it's real tight, the spelunking.
Yeah.
But just
the claustrophobia I get, but like just being like cave, no. Because this cave was like 60
Right.
feet ceilings. You know, it was huge. The hair was pretty fun. Not for Bridget or Callie. Our makeup artist ended up figuring out how to do the hair because it's all practical.
Uh-huh.
And at first we had built this whole rig that we're going to tape on the side of her face and like pull it through like from behind through like a tube, and it just looked terrible. Even though we'd like figured out it looked good in the test and stuff, but we're just like, it just, so she came up with like the kind of clown.
When you said it was all practical, I started to think maybe it's like a clown.
Yeah. So she had to wind the hair in a special way, like a clown pulling up the
handkerchief
scarves from their wrist or whatever, so that it could fit under Bridget's tongue. And Callie had to like, and this is like we said, like 3 weeks before COVID. You can never do this now, but she's literally like, our makeup designer was like physically inserting it under the actress's tongue in a special way so that she could still, talk and breathe, but then have it and be able to dispense it. So otherwise it would just like come out in one big like hairball, like a cat throwing up or something, versus like what we wanted is like 10 feet of disgusting crap. And then she would pull it out and dip it. We had this whole bucket full of, it was like Caro syrup and chocolate syrup and some other goop, all like edible stuff, but nasty looking. And she had to dip it back in there and put it in her mouth. So there's all this slime coming out. And it was pretty disgusting to do like the long take, on like you would start to like almost puke on set. Yeah. Because it was like 5 minutes of pulling this out and then like, let's do it again. Ugh. Gross.
Well, she deserves a lot of credit for filming that scene, I would say.
Yeah, she's a trooper, man. Because every time she would be like reading the script, she'd be like, "Oh, so they're gonna do this with the computer, right?" Nope, we're pulling it out.
Yeah, it wouldn't have looked nearly as good if you did it in CG.
No,
it wouldn't have been like the way.
Especially if I had done it.
Yeah. Oh, if you just did it on your computer.
So gross.
So, how did you get involved on the producing end?
I just, I started this company 20-ish years ago, 19 years ago. And I just wanted to get involved in movies, and people would come to me like, "Oh, I've got this project and we need help with this production or with post or with VFX, or we need a soundstage or whatever." So I'd kind of like dip my toe in like that. And then I've got a lot of filmmaker friends and stuff like that, and they would have projects. And so then I started getting involved, raising money and producing and just doing whatever I could, if I'm producing a movie, I'm also like the set photographer, and I'm doing the VFX, and I'm, doing craft services, whatever it takes. But it's hard. It's hard work. I think I've produced 3 movies with first time directors, and it's a lot of work, for sure. So I knew what I was asking when I asked my producers to produce for me as a first time director. But I also had the opportunity to do that and kind of live vicariously through them and kind of get to see some of the roadblocks and stuff like that without it being on my kind of watch, so I was definitely able to carry some of that stuff through and I think see a little further down the road than a typical first time director. And it helped me just really focus on the stuff that mattered and not get lost in the weeds on things that I knew would come out in the wash or whatever.
Yeah. So, how did The Old Ways end up on Netflix? Was that through the festivals?
Yeah, so we got into Sitges, and then we reached out to some sales reps that we've worked. Well, I'm repped at UTA, and so they got involved. And then there's this company called XYZ that we've done a few movies with. So I hit them up and was like, "Hey, our little movie just, got into one of the 3 kind of most prestigious horror places to go." And they're like, oh, great. Well, and normally what they would do is they would like set up a party and go to Spain or wherever it is and take all these meetings and have secret pre-screenings with buyers and all these whatever backdoor things. And now it was like, I think they emailed 15 people a link and we're like, hey, it's debuting at Sitges. You want it? And luckily, maybe about 5 places did at various capacities. And we kind of got in a little negotiation bidding war kind of thing. And Netflix came to the table with the strongest proposal. And obviously the best chance of people seeing it, I think, when we were in the middle of a unknown length pandemic. Because there were other options that were like, we're going to do theatrical and this and that. And we're like, is there a theater? We don't know. Right. Or does that mean you're going to sit on it for 4 years until there is a theater? And Netflix is like, we've got 250 million subscribers worldwide that will all be able to see it. So we're like, yes, let's do that. And then we still got to release it on Blu-ray and iTunes afterwards. So we were able to put together this meaty Blu-ray that's got a bunch of cool bonus features and 2 hours. I don't know if I just told you this, but like a feature-length documentary. It's got a commentary track. It's got like almost 30 minutes of deleted extended scenes. It's got storyboard comparisons to the final cut and the whole storyboard like alternate ending that we couldn't afford to shoot. So if you're into like the how, this gets pretty in the weeds and in a way that I always love.
I like that kind of stuff, and it's becoming less and less out there, unless it's like a restored, movie from 20 or 30 years ago. Usually, a lot of new stuff doesn't get,
Yeah, and even those are usually like more retrospective, like interviewing someone 40 years after the fact. Like ours is like it's in the weeds, everything from how we did the score and to the creature stuff and the effects and all kinds of fun stuff. It's pretty entertaining. I think I enjoy it. I'm definitely biased, but it's fun to watch. It doesn't feel like a marketing, like, like a fluff piece. It's, and in fact, the editor, Matt, who did the movie, edited the behind the scenes thing too, in his spare time. So it was, made with love, I think.
Nice. I'm a big fan of commentary tracks too.
Cool.
So I'm looking for it because you don't see that hardly anymore.
Yeah, and Marcus and I love them and not grew up on them, but when Blu-ray or when DVDs came out, right about the time we graduated college, just like went nuts on them, and there's such a difference between a good one and a bad one.
I say that, and I say
a lot of times you see it, it's like the director and the star are just like watching the movie, like,
right? Like they might have seen it for the first time.
They're like, oh, you remember that? Yeah, that was weird. And then like 5 minutes of silence. So we broke it down. Like we had a whole like bullet point, talking point list, and we would pause and rewind and do retakes and make sure we could like cram it all in. And so I think it's pretty meaty as well, or at least I hope it is. We tried our best to make it like worth the watch because it bugs me because I have the Criterion streaming service and there's a lot of commentaries on there, and they're like, it's like 30 years after the movie was made, they made the commentary, and it's just like not good sometimes. Like they can't remember. They're like, oh, you remember we filmed that by the beach? Like, yeah, I know. That's a beach. They're like specific, actually telling you what's happening in the movie. It's like, here's a part where I walk in and I tell her about the dog. You're telling me it's happening. Thank you. I don't need the visual impaired description language. Like that's already on there. But then there's ones that are just like so rich, and you're like, this is great. This is why I bought this thing. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Do you have that's a weird question, but do you have any favorite commentary tracks?
I don't know. I used to. Robert Rodriguez did so many cool things on his DVDs. big fans of his when we were in college because El Mariachi had just come out. I think Desperado came out when we were like freshmen or something in college. And he'd written a book right before then about how he made El Mariachi, and it was super inspiring. And he would just do so many cool little things, like little videos and stuff. And I just loved, like, they were so practical. Like they were like mini film school lessons, and I loved all that stuff that he did on those. Trying to think. I mean, I remember back in the day, I haven't heard it in a long time, but like the Laserdisc of Star Wars had 1 or 2 commentary tracks that were pretty cool. I mean, but it was also like the first time I'd heard a commentary, so it was blowing my mind. Because I don't even think I knew anyone with a Laserdisc, but there was like a Laserdisc store, and they were just always playing that, and I would stand back there and watch it in like 30-minute increments until it told me to leave. But yeah, I can't think off the top of my head because it's been so. I haven't really gotten that much physical media lately. It's hard for me to know. Mm-hmm. I've got a bunch of Criterions on DVD that aren't even opened. Yeah. That I was like, this is special. I'll open it one day, but not now. And now it's been like 25 years.
Yeah.
They're actually not worth any more sealed. I looked on eBay because like people can fake the seal or whatever, so it doesn't help. Right. I've got like The Killer, which is a good one, and Robocop, like the extended edition of that, and there's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
If you need to know the body count of Robocop, you have to ask: is it the director's cut or is it the regular cut? Because they just start murdering people for no reason in the director's cut.
Uh-huh. But yeah, that used to be exciting if I would see there was multiple commentary tracks for a movie.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It was so cool. I love it. I wish they would start doing more of it on iTunes and stuff. And like, I don't see any reason why Netflix wouldn't do it. I'm optimistic about them because they did a bunch of like cool documentary stuff for Army of the Dead. Mm-hmm. That wasn't just like promo-y stuff, and they put it on the service. So, and like Disney Plus was doing it with The Mandalorian and things like that. So I'm hoping that kind of stuff's going to make a comeback because it's very inexpensive to do, and the people who like it love it.
Yeah, I do. So that's interesting because I think that kind of people would buy physical media if there's more stuff on there, and with the rise of all the different streaming sites, probably to stand out, like you start adding some more incentives, like we have these other things on here in addition to just the movie or the series.
Yeah. I used to work in movie. Well, I still do, but I used to do a lot of like advertising for movies, and we would do back in the heyday of DVDs. They called it VAM, value added material, and we'd do these whole commercials that were just like 20 deleted scenes, 2 hours of this commentary by this, and this trailer. Oh wow, the trailers.
Yeah, it's always exciting to be able to watch the trailer of the movie that you're watching.
Yeah, which is kind of cool when it's like an old movie.
Yeah,
because they're one insane.
That you can't just,
even like a movie that came out in the mid-90s. You watch the trailer and you're like, what is going on? Like, this is so different.
Mm-hmm. Well, now most of the trailers are like the whole movie in 2 minutes.
Oh yeah,
you gave away the whole film.
I won't watch them because I've worked in trailers and I know the secrets. With some shot that's in the beginning, I'm like, that's from the end. You just spoiled that for me.
That is what's a big part of going to the festivals for me is you get to see a lot of movies that a lot of times I don't know anything about going in.
Oh yeah,
you just watch them, and if it's impractical to go just see movies you know nothing about, but at a festival you can. And
that's why I love Fantastic Fest, because you can like crank. I don't know if you've been to that one, but
I haven't.
Oh, you should hit. Fantastic Fest is a very fun festival for just movie lovers because it's in Austin. It's at the Alamo Draft House, and it's in one multiplex. The whole festival. I
like the festivals that are in one.
And so what they do is they set it up. I think I can't remember, 5 or 6. I think might be 6, at least 5 slots, and it's the same slots like every day. so you just sign up. If you have a pass, you just sign up for your first, second, and third choice for each slot, and they assign you the tickets. You usually get your first choice unless it's like a huge premiere thing or something. And it's just so cool because it's like all the movies are starting at noon, no matter what's playing. So it's not, because like at a normal festival, you're like, you spend so much time trying to figure out like, okay, this movie starts at noon, but my next movie is at 2:15 and it's 3 miles away and I got to get there. But my friend he doesn't have tickets to that one. He's got a movie at 3. So I guess I'll see him tomorrow. You know, like I'm never going to see him again. Whereas this one, it's like, if you don't have the same movie as your friends or not interested in the same movie, you just be like, I'll meet you in the bar after in 90 minutes, and they're just all back there, and then you're back on the same schedule and you can go see the next movie together. And it's the only festival where I've been able to consistently hit, 5 movies a day. Cause that's like at Sundance or somewhere, you like set a record if you could see 5 movies in a day,
right.
Especially if it's snowing and stuff, and you're walking across town or trying to find a bus. But so if you just want to like crank through 15, 20 movies in 3 or 4 days, like, and drink and eat and everything, and the whole time.
Alamo Draft House is a good place. I went to South Texas Underground Film Festival, and they did theirs at Alamo Draft House, and it's an excellent place to watch movies because you can eat and drink while you're watching the movies.
Yeah, it's fun. So I would put that one on your list. I think they're just wrapping it up right now for this year. But go next year.
Yeah,
no COVID.
Yeah,
hopefully exactly. I'll be there.
Yeah,
because I went a couple of years in a row because we had some movies. The Wind played there, Mortuary Collection, some other stuff. So it's gotten to the point now when I go there, it's like I have 3-4 friends with movies there also. So it's like super cool to be supporting them and they get to see your movie, and it's very communal.
Yeah, I always mention that on the show. Like I've been to different ones in Buffalo a couple times, in Boston and stuff, and it's cool to see the same people who are always there supporting each other's films, and they might have worked on each other's stuff. And I just like that about the film, especially some of the smaller ones have a really big community feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been dying to go to Chattanooga. We played there, but I didn't get to go because they didn't do in person this year. But I hear that's kind of like that too. And Panic Fest is supposed to be like that. Also didn't get to go to that, but one day. Yeah.
It's the main thing. I want everyone to be healthy and everything, obviously, but that's the main thing I missed during pandemic was going to the festivals.
Yeah, for sure.
So are you working on anything currently?
Well, my company made Muppets Haunted Mansion that comes out Friday on Disney Plus. So if you like Muppets or Disneyland, you might like this. It turned out really good, so look forward to that. I've got nothing too crazy yet. I've got a couple of things in the hopper that we're trying to get off the ground, as well as we might start pitching like a sequel or TV series or something for the Old Ways.
Interesting.
But pandemic kind of slowed stuff down, and we were also we're still in the process of getting this movie out and trying to make a name for ourselves in the industry with that kind of stuff. So hopefully this will lead to some more exciting projects, and we'll be talking on future episodes about future things.
Yeah, sounds good. So Old Ways is on Netflix right now, and next week, the 12th, it'll be on digital. And is that also when the physical releases?
Yeah, and we're also, I think pre-sales are already open for the record. So we're doing a vinyl of it with some cool. Gorgeous artwork. If you check it out, I think Burning Witches Records is releasing it, and it's pretty sick. So that's one that if you like to collect things that you can touch, that'll be a good one. The pandemic has caused a shortage on vinyl, so like we wanted it to come out a few weeks ago, but it's like we're waiting for like the pucks.
The actual
vinyl to show up.
All right.
Yeah, like the actual material.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. So hopefully that's coming very soon.
Very cool. And how can people follow you or the film?
Yeah, I'm my name, Chris Alender, at Twitter, Instagram, the Old Ways Movie at both of those, as well as the website. There's like mugs and stuff up there, t-shirts.
Oh, cool.
If you like merch, we got that, and news about upcoming release information and stuff like that will be there. What else? Yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter or whatever, and I'll probably answer it if it's not insulting.
Very good.
Like half of Twitter.
Yeah, they're just half of the internet, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, it's been very cool to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Cheers.
Bye.